So today we will do the stomach. So stomach is alphabetically J-shaped structure and is derived from the foregut. So first we will do the morphology of the stomach. So stomach is the part of the GIT which is where the food is converted into a paste that is called the chyme. So whatever food we take, the solid, semi-solid, hard or soft, it remains in the stomach for 3 to 4 hours. And in these 3 and 4 hours, what is happening? There is a mixing of the HCl in the stomach with the food, and whole of the food, veg, non-veg, solid and soft, is converted into the paste, and it takes 3 to 4 hours. So during 3 to 4 hours, whole of the food we have taken is converted into the paste that is called the chyme, and the pylorus remains closed for 3 to 4 hours, that is called the gastric emptying time. And after the chyme is fully formed, the acidic chyme then enters into the next part of the GIT, that is the duodenum, when there is a pylorus is open. So this is the seat of the formation of the paste or the chyme, that is the function of the stomach. Now, if we see the stomach, it is alphabetically J-shaped and it is continuous with the esophagus. And esophagus enters into the diaphragm, pierces the diaphragm at the level of the T10 vertebra, and then it enters. So a small part of the esophagus is also called the this is the intra-abdominal part of the esophagus. And if we put a horizontal lines on the left side, the upper part of this part is called the fundus of the stomach, and it lies under the left dome of the diaphragm. And fundus is always filled with the air, because air is lighter, and when we take the food, air also enters the food with the food, and because of the lighter, it remains upward. And in the X-ray, plain X-ray of the abdomen, the air under the black air under the left dome of the diaphragm is a normal feature. Then it has got the two ends. This is called the esophageal end, or it is also called the cardiac end. This is called the cardiac end of the stomach. And this angle is called the cardiac notch. It is called the cardiac notch because we know above the diaphragm lies the heart. So because of the heart, this is called the cardiac notch. So when a line is drawn horizontally from the cardiac notch on right and left side, so that is the end of the esophagus and the start of the body of the stomach. And this is the lesser curvature, and this is the greater curvature of the stomach. And at the end here, this is the pyloric end or pylorus, and sometimes it is demarcated externally, the pylorus, by the Mayo's vein. So Mayo's vein is the indication that under the Mayo's vein lies the pyloric end or the pylorus sphincter of the stomach. Then this pylorus lead to the C-shaped duodenum, the part of the small intestine is next to the stomach. So these are the parts of the stomach: lesser curvature, greater curvature, cardiac end, pyloric end, and the body of the stomach. Now pylorus is a very constricted part made up of the sphincter mechanism, and as the stomach body goes downward, it becomes conical or becomes narrow. So when it becomes narrow part, then it is called the pyloric antrum. Then the pyloric antrum then lead to a small part just proximal to the pyloric sphincter, and this part is called the pyloric canal. Because the walls of the pyloric canal, they are like the canal, but here there is unequal. The pyloric antrum is unequal. It is small here and large here. But in the pyloric canal, both the walls, they are of the same width. So we use the word pyloric canal for this. This is the pyloric antrum. Now, when we remove the stomach from the human body and we examine it, study the outer layer of the is called the serous layer or serous coat, or what is called the adventitious coat, and it is fibrous tissue forms the outer covering of the bag-like storehouse of the food. When we remove it, the second layer below is the muscular layer. And there are three muscles in the wall of the stomach. They are smooth muscles. In the whole of the GIT, there is the outer longitudinal and inner circular smooth muscle arrangement. But particular in the stomach, there is a one more additional smooth muscle is present in the wall, that is called the oblique muscles also. Because it has to churn the food, solid food, into the paste or the chyme. So a vigorous peristaltic movement is required for the conversion of the food into the paste. So an additional layer of the smooth muscle, the oblique, there has been incorporated in the wall of the stomach. So there are the longitudinal muscles and there are oblique muscles and there are circular muscles. It is found everywhere in the stomach, but the circular muscles, particularly at the pyloric end, they get condensed and they are aggregated together here to form what is called the pyloric sphincter. Mechanism is there. And otherwise, the outer longitudinal muscles which are present in the esophagus, they are continuous as such in the wall of the stomach as well as. Then there are another muscle is that called the oblique muscles. So they run obliquely in the wall of the stomach. And then third type is the circular muscles. So they are also present and they are circular in fashion. So in this way, stomach has got a very good amount of the three types of the smooth muscles in its wall, responsible for the formation of the what is called the chyme or the paste. Inner to the muscle there lies the submucosa, and in the submucosa lies the artery, veins, nerves, lymphatics, and lymph nodes. So they are present lymphatics in the submucosa, and the innermost layer of the stomach is called the mucous membrane or mucosa. So here the mucosa, different type of the histological cells are present in the mucosa. Main, it produces the HCl producing cells for the acidic, and in order to neutralize the ill effect of the HCl on the mucosa itself, the mucus gland, they are also incorporated along in the mucosa. So a mucus layer is coated inside the mucosa so that the ill effect of the HCl is minimized. So that is the layer, and the mucosa in the stomach is the low cuboidal, is the low columnar, and it is raised as a velvet-like fashion. And the small velvet-like elevation of the mucous membrane, mucosa of the stomach, is called the rugae. And various type of the cells are present in these rugae. So when we put our hand over, when we cut the stomach, spread the stomach, and if we push or put the hand over the mucosa, so it gives the velvet-like appearance, velvety appearance because of the arrangement of that is called the what is called this of the mucous membrane, which is look like the soft structure. So they are the, and in between they are the gastric pits are present, which give the velvet-like appearance. So that is how we do the layers, 4 layers of the wall of the stomach under the morphology of this. Now, the inside the gastric ulcers, they are very, very common. In the mucosa of the stomach, and gastric ulcers, they are very common near the lesser curvature. And the cancer or CA of the stomach is very common near the greater curvature. The reason is this, that the mucosa near the lesser curvature and mucosa near the greater curvature, how it is having the ulcer formation. So as we know, the mucous membrane near the greater lesser curvature is exposed to the HCl all the time, whether the stomach is with the food or without the food. While the mucosa on the greater curvature is also exposed to the HCl. So how it is differentiated that ulcer is common near the lesser curvature and cancer or the CA is common in the greater curvature mucosa? As you know, when we start taking the food, because of the position of the stomach, food falls and touches the greater curvature mucosa, and then it starts touching the lesser curvature. And as we start taking the food, more and more food, then what will happen? The HCl content will become in the upper part. It goes up and up. And this mucosa is exposed to the HCl with the food and without the food. So lesser curvature is having the more exposure to the HCl as compared to the greater curvature, because the greater curvature mucosa is very large. So ulcer is common near the lesser curvature. As in the night, after taking the dinner, stomach is emptied after 3 hours, that is the gastric emptying time. Then whole of this stomach is filled with the HCl. So mucosa of both the sides, they are exposed to the HCl when the stomach is empty. But when we take the food, so because of the gravity, food falls near the greater curvature. And lesser curvature is exposed to the HCl even after taking the food or without food. And HCl goes away from the greater curvature mucosa. So lesser curvature is always prone to the gastric ulcer. Then question arises, why the cancer is common near the greater curvature? And what is the cancer? It is a non-healing ulcer. A non-healing ulcer is called the cancer. And this cancer is caused due to the any ulcer formed on the greater curvature mucosa. Most commonly it is because of the small pieces of the bones in the non-veg people which strike and damages the mucosa, or in the vegetarian people, these conical seeds of the orange or any other fruit item, this conical nature of the seed damages the mucosa on the greater curvature as the food falls on the greater curvature first, then touches the lesser curvature mucosa. So, because of the injury to the mucous membrane of the greater curvature, and subsequently a wound is formed inside the mucosa, and this mucosa which is so formed, which is wound here, will be irritated and it is prevented from healing because of the HCl exposure. At night, when no food is present in the stomach, the HCl will prevent the healing of this ulcer. Or after taking the food also, if you are taking the food, so food falls on the greater curvature, and the presence of the food again prevent the healing of the ulcer. So ulcer which is formed, if formed on the mucous membrane of the greater curvature, it remains unhealed with food and without food. And that hinders the healing process, and that leads to the non-healing ulcer, and it is called the cancer of the stomach. So this is the explanation for the lesser curvature is prone to the gastric ulcer, and greater curvature mucosa is exposed to the cancer of the stomach. So after doing the morphology, now we will switch on to the next part of the stomach, that is called, is very important, is the blood supply. That is the arterial supply of the stomach. And then the venous drainage. So first we will do the arterial supply. As we know, stomach has been assigned the duty of conversion of the solid food into a paste or the chyme. So a large amount of a good amount of the three type of the muscles are present in the wall, which helps in making the churning the food. The stomach is like a mixie. If you take a mixie, you put the milk into it, you put hard sugar into it, you put hard pieces of the apple or other fruits here, the banana also, soft banana also. So mixie, you press it for only for 3 to 4 minutes, and within 3 and 4 minutes what is formed? Whole of your juices, fruit juice is ready. So in the mixie it takes 3 to 4 hours, but in the stomach it takes 3 to 4. Mixie takes 3 to 4 minutes, but in the stomach it only takes 3 to 4 hours to convert the solid and semi-solid food into smoothie, or what is called your paste or the chyme. So when this food is present, falls here. When we start taking the food falls here, and this food and the wall touching the food containing the muscles will contract, and food is thrown into the upper part. When food reaches here, the muscles in the wall of the stomach, they contract and food goes here. When it reaches here, again the contraction of the muscle, the food falls here. And when food reaches here, again muscles contract, they throw. So this happens during 3 to 4 hours. A vigorous peristaltic on the contraction of the three group of the muscles of the wall in the stomach, they make the shunting of the food up and down, and what is this called? The formation of what is called the chyme or the paste. So stomach has to do a lot of work for 3 to 4 hours. So a good amount of the blood or the oxygen is needed for the muscles. So stomach having a very, very good blood supply, that is the arterial supply, as well as the venous drainage of the stomach. So let us see which arteries supply the stomach. Now as we know, the stomach is suspended from the porta hepatis or from the liver with the attachment of the two layers of the peritoneum, that got the lesser omentum attached to the lesser curvature of the stomach. So upper is number 1 layer and backside is the number 2 layer. And this number 1 layer covers the stomach anterior surface and goes laterally, and it becomes the diaphragmatic surface. The second layer, number 2 layer, passes behind the stomach, covers the posterior surface of the stomach, and then it again goes to the touches the diaphragm and becomes the diaphragmatic peritoneum. So this part of the stomach remains, fundus of the stomach remains without peritoneum. So it is also called the bare area of the stomach. Like the liver, so stomach is also having this bare area because no peritoneum is touching it. So that's it. Then from this greater curvature, 4 layers of the greater omentum, they are hanging and making the stomach in a vertical position in any of the supine or prone or recombined position of the human body. Stomach always remains J-shaped, and because of the weight of the greater omentum, having the 4 layers of the peritoneum containing a lot of the amount of the yellow color fat in it, which makes it happy, and it is a policeman of the stomach or the body also because of the macrophages incorporated in the greater omentum. So greater omentum is attached to the greater curvature, and from the stomach, these number 1 and number 2 layers, they go to the spleen also. As the spleen is also related to the right hypochondrium, so these 2 layers, number 1 and number 2 layers, they also cover the spleen also, and they form the gastrosplenic ligament. Gastrosplenic ligament. And the number 2 layer, after touching the hilum of the spleen, it goes to the left kidney, and it is called the lienorenal ligament. So left kidney is retroperitoneal. So lienorenal ligament is attached the hilum of the spleen to the anterior surface of the left kidney, which is lying retroperitoneally behind the stomach, or what is called content of the one of the content of the stomach bed. So good amount of the arterial supply is there of the stomach. Let us see which arteries supply which area of the stomach. So that first we will do the arterial supply, then we will switch on to the venous drainage of the stomach. So there is the lesser curvature, the greater curvature, the fundus, the pyloric end. This is the cardiac notch. So food enters from the esophagus into the stomach. So there is no any pyloric-like valve here, but only the constriction of the diaphragmatic muscles, which are mainly derived from the right crus of the diaphragm, they encircle the esophageal opening in the diaphragm, and this forms a physiological, this is called a physiological sphincter. And this line demarcates the anatomical gastroesophageal junction. This is anatomical, but histological gastroesophageal junction is proximal to the anatomical gastroesophageal junction, meaning thereby the mucosa of the stomach start proximal to the anatomical. So the change in the mucosa of the stomach started from the lower end of the esophagus. So the histological junction of the gastroesophageal junction lies proximal to the anatomical gastroesophageal junction. Now the arteries which are supplying the stomach, they are the left gastric artery, then right gastric artery, then the short gastric artery, Then come the right gastroepiploic artery. Then there is a left gastroepiploic artery and few posterior gastric arteries. So the left gastric artery, as we know, it is the branch of the celiac trunk. Celiac trunk will give the left gastric artery, which runs towards the esophageal opening in the diaphragm, and it supplies the lower end of the abdominal part of the esophagus. Then this artery runs into the number 1, it enters into the number 1 and number 2 layers of the lesser omentum. So celiac trunk is retroperitoneally, so left gastric artery is also retroperitoneally, but on the left attached border of the lesser omentum, this artery comes from the behind the retroperitoneum, and then it enters the number 2 and number 1 layer of the lesser omentum, and then it descends in the number 1 and number 2 layer near the lesser curvature, and it gives the branches which supply the mostly the stomach, body of the stomach near the lesser curvature. Then this artery ends here, and the right gastric artery, which is the branch of the hepatic artery, common hepatic artery, this is the common hepatic artery. Common hepatic artery, it gives the right gastric artery, which supplies the rest of the lesser curvature of the stomach and also the pylorus, and the anastomose with each other. So this is how the right and left gastric artery supply. The short gastric arteries are the branches of the splenic artery. As we know, the celiac trunk has got 3 branches: left gastric, common hepatic, and the highly tortuous splenic artery. This splenic artery also runs retroperitoneally behind the stomach bed, and this tortuous splenic artery runs over the upper border of the pancreas, which is also retroperitoneal, and this artery reaches the lienorenal ligament. In the 2 layers of the lienorenal ligament, the splenic artery then enters into the hilum, and it supplies the spleen. As it runs in the lienorenal ligament, it enters into the hilum of the. Then from the hilum of the spleen, so short gastric arteries, they enter into the number 1 and number 2 layer of the gastrosplenic ligament, and they reach the fundus, and the greater curvature is supplied by they are called the short gastric arteries. Then a artery from the splenic artery, it enters into the 2 layers of the gastrosplenic ligament, and this artery supplies the posterior wall of the stomach, and these branches, they are called the posterior gastric arteries. Supply the posterior wall of the stomach. Now, the splenic artery, it also gives a branch which runs into the number 1 and number 2 layer of the gastrosplenic ligament. From the gastrosplenic ligament, this artery enters into the number 1 and number 2 layer of the greater omentum, and this artery is called the right gastroepiploic artery. Gastro means it supplies the stomach near the greater curvature, and epiploic word come that its arteries, they run down and supply the greater omentum also. That's why it's called the gastroepiploic arteries or branches. So this right gastroepiploic artery is the branch of the splenic artery, and it runs, left gastroepiploic artery is the branch of the splenic artery. It runs midway here in the greater curvature. Then a branch of the common hepatic artery, which is